are listening to the Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Dom.
Hey.
By Laurie.
Evening, Joey.
Very little point in you raising your hand, Laurie. This is an audio medium. We can see each other. You're going to need to say your name if possible. And joining us as a special guest debut appearance from Lou Whale. Hello, Lou.
Howdy.
Pleasure to have you with us. We've been hoping to have you on for a little while. Now is finally the time when you've got about sort of a month's worth of the most exciting month of Cov chat to sort of join us to talk about. So you can have normally it would be moments of the week at this point. We're going to have moments of the last, 3 weeks, month or whatever it is since Robin's departed. What's taken your eye the most in that time?
I was kind of torn between the photo of Dr. Mark Gordon Robbins getting his doctorate. But I think for me, the biggest moment is naughty Norman against Sheffield United. And I just thought he's already made himself a bit of a cult hero at the club with his antics. I mean, if that happened against us, I would probably make hating Norman Bassette a personality trait. But I think it's been a while since we've had a player of that kind of caliber that's not afraid to do some of the dirty work and the dark arts. And I've just fallen head over heels for him after that moment. So
what I can't get my head round is before he decided that he was going to kick off with, is it Ahmedodzic? Forgive me for that. He'd also dived horrendously twice beforehand, right? So it was like he'd gone out with a game plan very specifically in that game to be as pricky as he could possibly be. But I haven't really seen that much of that in any of. Dom, did you say that did you do your 10-game review this week?
Yes, I did.
I haven't seen in the other 10 games. There's been elements of it, but nothing to the extent of that game. What happened?
He did seem to be particularly up for it in that game. I mean, there have been just like a few, just like absolutely unnecessary clatters that he's done when chasing the ball. But actually, he just hasn't been as involved in the action enough to be that much of a wind-up merchant until that game where it was just the perfect one for him to just chase people around and just show the best side of good old Norm.
Lou, did you have a particular highlight within the kind of within the shithousery of that game from Bassette? There was a number of absolute classics.
Yeah, I mean it's either the wink, but maybe the tongue wagging was probably the best bit. I kind of featured that into one of match day graphics for my supporters group because I just couldn't not highlight that moment. It's just
quite sensual.
It's just a classic. It was sensual, yeah. I would say that's a good adjective for that. Yeah, I'm not sure it was received in a sensual way.
I don't remember frantically texting people, not even people that I don't even know. When he was blowing kisses to the Sheffield United players, I was texting people that I haven't spoken to in ages, just being like, "You have to put Sky Sports on now." I was like, I don't know. You're witnessing the birth of this is like fucking Messi's debut for Barcelona. Like, if you're fans of absolute pricks, this guy is like, we're witnessing the goat born in this particular moment in time. I remember also another highlight of that particular bit. By the way, a lot's happened in this last month or so, but we will exclusively be talking about that before. That's all I'm interested in. The other highlight for me, the other big highlight was, and I thought when I saw it live, I was like, that doesn't look right to me. And then when they showed the replay, it was 10 times worse. The wrestling style elbow drop on. I was like, that was one of the things that you see in football that don't happen very often, where you think, I didn't even know you could do that. He so convincingly fell on him to avoid detection, but it was horrible, just really, really needlessly violent. But it's not a kick, it's not a punch or anything. You just think, I guess if you are falling down, you can fall your entire body weight on someone else. That's going to really hurt. Yeah, I was super impressed. Well, I think you've won if this is a competition, then you've won. But I think there's plenty of other stuff to fire at. So, Dom, Laurie, have you got anything that you want to take that on with?
I just want to dwell on that for a bit because does Norman Bassette look an awful lot like Jamie Vardy, like a young Jamie Vardy? And he has the same kind of like almost like lizardy type Slytherin vibe about him, where he's like quite angular, like a gecko, but like a continental gecko. This one, and I just can't get that. Since I've seen that, I now just see him as a young Jamie Vardy who's less good at finishing based on what he did at Millwall. But yeah, that would kind of chime with the dark arts vibe, which I adore.
Him and Vardy have got a particular type of look as well, which I don't know if this has ever happened or you've come across this, where you'd imagine that the people that you'd meet that would be like dead, like psycho hard would be like big guys, like big, strong people, right? Actually, the people that are like would really lay waste in a fight, always wiry, angular people who've just got that bit of their brain that's a bit fucked. He's got that, like Vardy has, where you just think, I bet you could batter Wes Morgan. Like, you wouldn't, but like, do you know what I mean? You wouldn't think it was going to happen, but I bet if it really come to it, you'd throw down.
Wes Morgan's probably like just quite soft and like nice to hug, isn't he? Awful at fighting.
You can imagine just the size difference that you'd think, look, this is a mismatch here, but you'd be like, well, I don't know, actually. I think Vardy's probably got that nutty. Bassette's
actually, the other person, sorry, this isn't like a lookalike contest, but do you remember Monsters Inc? Do you remember Randall, the kind of pink dragon who can go invisible? That is Norman Bassette, Vardy, merge. Randall. Is it Randall? Yeah, I think it's Randall.
It's Randall, yeah.
Randall's also the one from Recess, who's like that evil cartoon child. So bad energy, that name.
Top 3 Randalls.
Dom, have you got anything Randall related, or do you want to pull this back to some sort of
if we're looking back over the past month, one thing that really comes to mind is the fans forum with Doug King, which I think everyone was kind of expecting just to get a bit of guff from Doug King. Just he's like managed all the questions. He knows what he's going to get asked, and he's like prepared for it. He's going to say a lot of words without actually saying anything, and then just starts 2-footed in on Robins basically from the start, and like without even getting asked tough questions, I think revealed like quite a lot about the way in which he runs the club, and like the whole notion that we sacked Mark Robins by the board and there's going to be a new manager who's going to fit into the structure, and he's just doing it by himself, and he's just there to make the big decisions, and that was like really it was like on the verge of like unprofessional. I mean, I can't believe you've just like sacked someone. I'm sure you were still in like negotiations as to someone's payoff settlement, and you've almost completely like character assassinated them or assassinated like their competency for a job. It was kind of crazy.
It became clear why he's called Doug King and not Doug Democracy after that,
I think. Very, very strong. I know everything to me is Simpsons references, but one of the bits of unprofessionalism that was littered throughout that forum was I think he tried to do it as something of an illusion, but he was too ham-fisted about it, and he basically was like, look, some of the coaches just aren't good enough, right? And I keep thinking of that thing in The Simpsons where Germans buy the power plant, and then they have that announcement that's like, we've conducted the review and these are the redundancies. Simpson, Homer. They were like, goodbye George Boateng. You're like, oh, that's who he was talking about then. He was like, no, I'm not going to name any names. I'm only going to be sacking one coach as a result of it. So read into it what you will. Some of these coaches just aren't good enough. We'd be like, who? We'd be like, well, we don't want to. We're not going to say who that is. I think we know who that is now. But yeah, that was that was. You wonder what happened there, because Boateng, didn't he leave one job to come down here? Didn't he leave Hull? Isn't that why it was that weird love triangle between? BTA.
I think
So
he was
you're
working
looking
with Garner.
Was he?
Oh,
Okay.
it was, yeah.
So
But yeah, the forum was explosive. Like you say, to start off with, they were like, so, Doug, do you want to tell us about what's happened? We're like, Mark Robbins fell out with 85. Whoa, straight in with the
It was a
good
bit
stuff.
like, in Austin Powers where Will Ferrell's character can't bear to be asked like 3 questions in a row, and then he just tells all of the information. Doug King can't bear to be looked at in the eye, and then he spills all of the information. But you're so right, Dom. It was crazy. It was like he just was gagging to get this information out, but he was like, I can't just put out a statement because that would almost be like too professional. But what I can, and maybe someone would have had to like proofread it for him. He was like, no, hold my pint. I've got this, guys. And he just goes into the bear pit and is just like absolutely spills his guts. But clearly he was just pissed off being like deemed incompetent by the masses. And he was like, no, let me put this to rights. And I mean, what was your takeaway? Because I remember just opening my phone. I wasn't watching it, and I just opened the WhatsApp group for this podcast, and it was like 100 messages. And I was like, Jesus, is Mark Robbins dead or something? What's happened? And it was just like reams of critique about what was happening.
Yeah. The whole kind of dropping the bombshell, in hindsight, seems like a very deliberate effort now, because I was lucky enough to be in that room. And we were all sat there waiting to just throw everything at Doug, and just, I was kind of worried it was going to get into a slanging match from the get-go. And then he comes out and drops this massive bombshell at everyone, and no one really knew what to say at that point. Yeah. So I can't help but feel that was tactical, as well as him just being a little bit pissed off about the slack he picked up on social media as a result of the sacking. But yeah, it was box office.
Of power.
He's trumped you there.
Everyone. So my understanding, Lou, is were you asked to submit questions before you went in? Yeah.
I think all the public fans were given the opportunity to do that through CWR, and they received literally thousands of questions. So they were trying to compile them in a way that, there weren't duplicates, and trying to decide what the most cutting questions were going to be was a real challenge for them. I wasn't personally asked to submit any questions on behalf of my group, but I was there because I run a supporters group, and so did other people in the room, and there were just other prominent fans from social media and whatnot that had been invited. But yeah, we were given an opportunity in the room to ask other questions, but to be fair, the majority of the biggest questions people had were already in the mix that had been submitted by other people.
But this was the thing, though, is that so there was 2 things. One, the kind of opening salvo from Doug is maybe 10 minutes long of unbroken speech, right? And then the first thing that happens afterwards is, now bear in mind, I thought that Rob, Lorna, CWR, right? I thought they give a really good account of themselves generally. But one of the funniest moments of the night is they're like, the pre-plannedness of right, so Doug is going to talk for a bit, then we'll throw to some prepared CWR questions, but then the questions would all been answered immediately. And as well, a load of people in the audience, and this is what I was asking about in terms of, were you asked to bring your questions in first? Actually, if he's said, if you're going to ask questions, send them to me first, you're in a strange position in the audience of, can I go off piste now that there's this new information, or have I still got to ask the question that? So he was able to look like sort of the only smart guy in the room, because he was able to go, I've already answered that question about 5 times. I think we've talked about this, haven't we? And you're like, oh God, you're making these people look stupid. But I think it's not. I wasn't really fair, because I think, like you say, I would love to have been in the room, because it just felt like everybody must have had to have completely shuffled what their original intentions and whatever else was. Was that how it felt?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that the reasoning for the sacking just suddenly felt so seismic that it just, people needed a good 20 minutes just to kind of digest the news that this was all apparently Mark's fault, and Mark's the saint as far as we're all concerned. So trying to wrap our heads around that, and then come up with constructive questions, was then there for a challenge for the audience that was in the forum. So yeah, it really put everyone on the back foot.
Yeah, because everyone's been kind of trying to construct an opinion based on like relatively little information, just like a huge like fact, which is Mark Robins is no longer the manager. And now you're being given all of this like detail and information in the space of like, what, 300 seconds. And then it's like, what do you make of that? And everyone has to like in the room decide on the whim. And it's like, they're not on Twitter anymore. They have to actually like think in real life and be like, Jesus, have I got to have an opinion in real life now?
Yeah, we're just not used to that.
That's a lot harder.
Hang on a second. Are you asking me to change my mind? I'm not sure I've never done that.
You're asking me to be reflective.
Yeah. The other thing is that I think he's got an unbelievably soft ride of the fact that what he said in the forum was very compelling, but then because nobody's got attention spans or memories or patience or anything now, especially, you know, in the 5,000 messages that we'd sent on our WhatsApp group for this podcast, the sort of conclusion was, well, one, let's see who he brings in, because that will be the proof in the pudding, really, of kind of a lot of the stuff that we thought was worthwhile to listen to. That there was a reason that we didn't know about of bringing Robins in, and the idea was that he would be looking to replace effectively him and AD in this one way of doing it. And I'm not. This is not a criticism of Lampard. I don't see that what he's done and who he's brought in is following what he said. The big thing that came out of that fans forum was this big thing of, well, fair play to him for being super honest. But actually, I don't think he's then sort of fulfilled that as a pledge. Am I wrong in that, Dom? Thoughts?
No, I think that was kind of sort of my reflections on seeing Lampard getting appointed, where it feels like we've sort of changed the title of the job from manager to head coach, but it's still very much that old model that we've had at this club for ages of, have we heard of this guy before? And is he going to just completely change the club on his own? We're going to let him appoint his own coaches. Don't know how that fits into the job of like recruiting players, but I mean, we were for as long as I can remember, all we've done when we've appointed managers is we've kind of gone, who's applied? We like this one, and appointed them. Like even the return of Mark Robins, we were incredibly lucky because the only reason he gets the job was because he'd managed us before and had done a pretty good job. I think like literally like
I remember him.
Yeah, because I think I heard that 2 months before Mark Robins missed out on the Notts County job in favour of Kevin Nolan. So that's how low his stock was.
The sliding doors of the world. Wow.
So yeah, it doesn't feel that big of a change. I mean, we've got like Dean Austin who's doing the recruitment. We've got Dr. Claire Marie Roberts doing the like performance fitness side of things.
Just quickly now you've brought her name up. I don't know if anybody has got any credence to this, but something that I read this week that I thought was interesting, and it seems an odd thing to say to make up, was I read that she had recommended John Eustace and was overruled.
Okay. Yeah, well, in the Daily Mail article, I think after Lampard had been appointed, I think the journalist there said that all the other people involved in the recruitment process had recommended that Doug King think of anyone else other than Frank Lampard.
Yeah.
And Frank Lampard got the job. So it's still, we've supposedly got experts in to try and take over the running of the club, but it is sort of Doug King doing everything according to his whim. And yeah, our fate's pretty much up to however good Frank Lampard is and his coaches are at their job. And we're not this sort of progressive, modern club that I think that certainly the statement after Mark Robins' sacking had tried to portray the club, where it feels like Doug King has sort of been told kind of the right things to say about how he's running the club, and he mentioned like there's people advising him who are involved with Premier League clubs, but actually what he wants to do is for this to be his football club, and he calls the shots, he makes all the big decisions, he's appointing the manager, he's getting involved in transfer negotiations, and that has come with the upside of we spent a lot more money than we ever would have under Sisu. We spent more money on his team than I think since the Premier League days, and possibly more than that. The training ground's much better. Going to the matches is a lot better experience. There's a lot of positives to what Doug King has done, but if we're trying to have faith in his decision making, what this all feels like is kind of just very sort of seat of the pants stuff, where there just doesn't feel like it's this sort of grand strategy that's going to take us to the top. It's just we're going to make decisions based on how we feel on a day, and perhaps if we'd beaten Derby County, Martin Robbins would still be our manager if Doug King had woken up on the other side of bed.
It still feels. I mean, it's helped Frank that he's just beat Millwall and that we didn't get the beating off Cardiff that we probably deserved. But that every time I remember that last month we had Mark Robins in charge and now we've got Frank Lampard in charge, I can't, even with the sort of let's give him a chance ethos, it does make me sad every time I think about it. You imagine 3 months ago, you'd be like, oh, Frank Lampard will take over from Robins before the end of the year. You'd be like, did Robins die? Like, what? did everyone else on earth die? Like, what precipitated him to go, but also for that to be the replacement? Anyway, Millwall, actually, and let's give him his due, that did seem to be, to me, certainly from the second half, like a bit of a let's call it the beginning of the Lampard era. It was a Lampard masterstroke. Luke, you were there, weren't you? Laurie, you were there as well. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, as you say, I wasn't enamoured in the first half. It felt very much like same old for most of the season. But yeah, they came out with a bit of spirit in the second half, and I think, if I'm being honest, I think it was work rate that got us the 3 points. It was hard, I think. I mean, I don't know if the conditions played a part of this, and it's also still very early days under the Lampard era to get a real sense of style of play yet. But yeah, I think it was just sheer work rate.
He hasn't got one.
Well, there is that. There is a very real possibility, but we're giving him a chance, aren't we? But yeah, so for me, I think it was very much just effort that got us over the line, and I do think on balance of things we were definitely the worthy winners, and it was a good day out in the capital in the end for those that were able to get. I mean, it looks like most of us got there, but obviously absolute storm made it an absolute hell for some people trying to get down there. But yeah, very much a good day out.
I saw somebody, a COF fan that lives in London, tweet at maybe 1 o'clock, the weather is absolutely fine here, which may have been true at the time. But when by the way, in terms of things you don't see often at football, the farce of watching either Rodoni or Torp try and take a corner whilst having to, why didn't someone, like one of the subs or something, just come and hold the corner flag for him?
Well, we were having this discussion in the stadium. It was only one corner of the pitch where this was happening because there was this mad wind tunnel that had been created. So every other corner seemed to be fine. It was just this one tunnel. And yeah, I was watching the game.
To be fair, they were better, but they were blowing off the corners in the other corners. But that one corner was mad, wasn't it?
It's impossible.
That was weirdly.
And someone was like, "Why doesn't a sub come and hold it, and I was like, this seems like one of those things they put in the paper where it's like, as the ref, what do you do in this scenario? Or like, if you're the umpire, what happens in this ludicrous situation? I don't think a player can interfere from off the pitch to hold the ball, but you could potentially get someone who's on the pitch to come and help you, but they didn't do that. But yeah, it was absolutely farcical. But he can hold the ball himself. That's the thing he could have done, just hold the ball and play it short, which is what ended up happening every time. But weirdly, they all ended up being quite dangerous corners, the ones that came from these ludicrous windy situations, because everyone was so distracted by like, what the fuck's going to happen to the ball? But they were like, oh my God, here's the ball. They didn't know what to do.
There was even one short corner. The defenders were so fixated on watching the corner flag blowing about or whatever that when it was taken short, they were like, oh shit, I'm meant to be defending this. So yeah, we've looked dangerous generally from set pieces. But like you say, a sort of mad wind blowing it around like a bottle of twats. And the fact that you could never tell when the corner was going to be taken in case the ball got blown away must have helped us to some extent.
And it sort of felt like one of those games where when I was a kid, when you'd play football and like the wind would be clearly in one direction and you'd be like 3-0 down at half time, but everyone would be like, don't worry, lads, we've got the wind. Lo and behold, you'd win 7-3, or you'd be like 5-0 up and then losing just because the wind defined the game. And I know that's less so at professional level, hopefully, but it did sort of feel like their corner goal that got disallowed, which we can talk about, that sort of, I don't think that was a foul watching it back. That just sort of looked like the wind just did a number on it, and everyone was like, fuck, like I can't really see how you disallow that, because it was just like keeper was sort of in the wrong position and most people just stood still. But I don't think the wind was like totally helping us in the second half, but we did also seem to deal with it pretty well. But there were still moments like when Bassette went through at the end, their defender just inexplicably missed it, and I think that must have been to do with the wind. But I mean, we can talk about that, but I mean, they were just diabolical in general, I thought.
But I think that's fair enough. I think we might have given us a percentage uplift. But I don't think it was the decisive factor about how the game swung by, right?
No.
The other thing for me, I don't know about you, Lou. One thing I thought was, and I don't know whether this was Millwall playing badly and it made us look better by association. I thought consistently throughout the game, but especially in the second half, is I just thought that we looked like we'd got better protection in front of the defence. I think Lamptey played better, but it just looked like Millwall were quite happy to come down our middle, but that for once we seemed like we'd got the door shut. Did you feel that in the ground, or is that me just reading something on telly?
I suspect you're probably just better at reading the game than I am. I think as soon as you said that, I look back. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it did seem pretty stable there. Whereas I think we've been kind of tore apart in recent weeks by other teams, particularly down the middle. So yeah, I think maybe something is happening there that has been a weak spot for most of the season. So potentially that's been an area of focus for the new coaching team. So yeah, they definitely look solid.
I do also wonder, and I don't mean this as as horribly as it sounds, because it is going to come out horribly. I do wonder as well whether it's the kind of what happens when you've got Jay Da Silva out of the team, sort of just allowing people clear passage through on that side of the pitch. Who I think going forward has been quite effective recently, but it's hard not to argue that we've conceded something like 6 or 7 goals that have basically been identikit versions of just people just being able to get down their right really, really easily and cut across. Don't know whether Bidwell didn't really seem to stand out, but that also probably that's, again, praised by association because of how little he stood out from a negative point of view.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a player that does the basics very, very well. He's not a glamorous player, but I suppose maybe that perhaps why he was put back in the starting 11 for that one. I'm not sure.
Anything else particularly stood out for you about that game? I mean, we kept a clean sheet. We didn't need to score 3 goals to win.
Well, Ephron, I think, seems to be coming into his own in that position. That's 2 goals in 2 games for him, isn't it? And I just think he looked he just looked comfortable in a way that he probably hasn't, in my opinion, for most of the season. And yeah, he had an opportunity early on in the second half to score then, but it was just somehow the keeper just left a leg out, and yeah, keeper got away with one there because everyone really should have put that one away. But yeah, he's probably been a standout for me.
I do think he's been. Yeah, I thought he was much improved on Saturday. I do think he's been how that chance played out and the fact that he scored what was a really really good finish, by the way, for the goal almost immediately afterwards, has saved him from. Actually, the shot that the keeper saved, to me, isn't the problem. It's the fact that a ball that he should have been out of control really easily hits him in the dick and it lands.
Yeah, we're calling it one chance. It was actually two chances.
You're right.
I really think that almost any other person buries that with their first touch instead of almost letting it hit them in the arsehole somehow. And again, let's give him credit. The wind, I guess, plays a big part in that. Actually, I still think I might have. I mean, I'm fucking awful. I'd have maybe had a better go at that from that position. Laurie, what did you think of EMC?
I'll get on to him. I thought.
Yeah, I'm asking you to.
Well, I don't know. I thought that miss was absolutely catastrophic. Like, he just absolutely skies like air hit at a kind of one-on-one, which is unforgivable. And then I even thought for his goal, I was like, we were watching it and I was like, when he hit it, I was like, wrong choice. Don't go for that like Hollywood finish. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. Can't argue that. It's gone in off the underside of the bar. Just
have you
the
watched
wind's
it back?
probably blown it in. Yeah, I've watched it back.
Am I being too kind here? I think that's a great finish.
Yeah, obviously every finish is great when it goes in, but I was just like, play the percentages. I don't think he needs to. I don't know what I'm hoping for him to do instead, but for someone who's like hasn't been like smashing them in all season, I'm just like, just be a bit more calm instead of just like trying to like a Hollywood finish in off the underside of the bar. Just like,
I think it's coming at him at a funny angle, at pace, isn't it? And I think all he's got to do is keep it down is the thing. And he does. He's leaning back, which is possibly poor form, but I don't know enough to say. But that he does enough to make sure that it's going down rather than going. Because the thing is, when he hits it, you're like, that looks like it could be going fucking like miles. But that he doesn't. But when you watch it back, you're like, no. This is a conscious thing to keep this down, isn't it? So fair play to you.
Yeah, I mean,
down enough, I guess.
And it was a great ball as well. Like it was actually
considering.
You don't really think you're going to score a goal like that in conditions like that, like a flighted ball to the back post, which is like well controlled and then finished. You think like, let's just get to the byline and just ping stuff across the box and just hope it flies in off someone's arse. But instead we end up scoring a goal like that, which is just like, that's not the percentages. But yeah, it was a good finish in the end.
Decent.
But
that feels like Millwall done and dusted then, doesn't it? I guess what is it actually a very competent 1-0 win doesn't have anything for us to talk about.
The first half was so bad. It was so bad. I never ever miss any of the game, and I left 4 minutes early to go and get a pint because I was just like, this is just awful to watch. Apart from what have I got down here? The wind, their disallowed goal, which probably wasn't disallowed. There was nothing. It was so like gridlock in there. Just
going back to this loud goal. Just a bit of a tangent. Dom, again, Brad Collins. Are you surprised still, or?
I think the problem we've got is that we've got 3 goalkeepers who are basically more or less as good / bad as each other. And they're all of the type where if you give them adequate protection, they'll do okay. But if you want heroics in goal, you're not going to get them. And it's kind of a case of sort of pick your poison. And Brad Collins is the number one at the moment because the random spinner got to his position. He got into the team for the Sunderland match because Ben Wilson's injured, and then Oliver Dovin picked up some freak injury. We don't really know what it was before the game, and he's the man in position. And it's like, you wouldn't. Is anyone really desperate for Oliver Dovin to come back in? I don't really see the need to like rock the boat with making a change in goal at the moment, just because I don't think there's like any significant improvement we're going to see if we brought in either one of them. So you might as well just have that consistency in goal for now, while we've got a new manager setting in and we're trying to be more settled at the back. I really don't think it makes any difference which of our three goalkeepers plays at the moment.
Lou, who are you picking if you're choosing the team for tomorrow? Who's in net?
I think, to be fair to,
You sound
to
like
be fair
you really
to Brad,
don't care.
I do. I think I'm just gonna. I think it's just a repeat of what Dom said. Really, out of the three of them on form, it almost doesn't matter. Just roll the dice and go with it. But I do think it is a shame from Dovin's perspective, because surely he was brought in with a purpose. When obviously we had Ben and Brad already, who were capable of being number one, to then bring in this young guy who seemingly was meant to jump straight in as the number one for the season, but it just hasn't quite worked out yet. Whether he just needs a bit more time to develop and find his feet, or hands rather. He's a keeper. Do you know? And yeah, but as you say, it does feel like they're all very similar in terms of form. It's almost inconsequential as to who you pick, which I think is a shame.
Just,
it's also mad because this is like a championship. Like, is that how good our defence was that season, that we had championship keeper of the year, and now he can't get in the team ahead of two, like, what has been described as mediocre goalkeepers. It's like, if only we'd flogged him then, that would have been a masterstroke. But if everyone had known he was shit, why didn't we just sell him?
Credit where it's due. That season, at the end of that season, Paul was like, we have to sell Ben Wilson now, because there's literally never going to be a point in time where he's worth any money ever again. And it wasn't a criticism of Ben Wilson so much as the fact that I think, is he 32, 33 now? And I think he played more games that season than he had throughout the rest of his career collectively, give or take. And just, it was a
glitch in the matrix. Look at that Wikipedia page.
Really suited being the goalkeeper that stood behind three centre backs that operated on the edge of the 6-yard box. Like, he was a really good last line of defence, doing one very specific job. Fair play to him. But like you say, as the sands of time drop through the hourglass, is that the more you go, well, we thought McNally and Doyle particularly were good then, but that now you look back at it, you're like, oh no, they were really good, weren't they? Really, really good. And as well, they were like perfect. McFadzean's like, I just need two good guys next to me. Like, we've got the guys. Like, we're going to make you look amazing. So, yeah. I just think that Dovin is becoming emblematic for me of what is one of the oddest transfer windows we've ever had, which is, I know that we've swapped managers, but this was already happening before Lampard came in. You spend £2 million on a guy that's 23 because ostensibly it's because his distribution is much better, and you've got an idea that you want to control the ball more. So you've got the strategic idea of bringing this guy in because of like a sort of a plan that you've got, but that's ditched like really early. I know that he picked up an injury, didn't he? But he was also dropped at points. And you just think, he's 23, 22, is he? I gotta think, like you say, it's not like Brad Collins or Ben Wilson are like, clawing balls out of the net in training because there's this incredible young tyro that needs a chance or whatever. This is guys that you know who they are. Why are you not persevering with him? And you buy Brandon Thomas Asante, and you go, okay, I think I get that. You're going to be back up. And then like 3 days later, they're like, oh, by the way, we bought this 19-year-old Belgian striker just because we were drunk. You're like, but hang on a second, you don't need to buy Brandon Thomas Asante anymore. But and so the team now is effectively just last season's team again, isn't it? Like it's not who did we sign in the summer that we would consider to be a first team player now?
Well, Rudoni.
Sorry, of course,
yeah. But I think he's there. He's ended up having to replace not only Callum O'Hare but Casey Palmer.
Yeah,
and,
so weirdly, even as a first team player, we're sort of 0.5 down.
Yeah.
I still don't. Yeah. I think it's just me, but I'm still not totally sure that I buy Rudoni as a number 10.
No, well, I think one of the things we've seen in these 2 games under Lampard is that it seems like Rudoni has been told, like, quite clearly, just you're the number 10, but go out wide, and that has really helped. I think Mason Clark be more involved because he's kind of ended up pushing off and almost playing like a second striker. So if you think about the 2 goals he scored and even the chance he missed, he's in the 6-yard box. He's running in behind in the middle. He's not playing as a winger. And I think Joey was saying on Saturday after the game that like Mason Clark's actual performance in terms of being a winger in that game was not that great. But he's become much more effective because we've tweaked Rudoni's role to take up some of those wide areas to allow Mason Clark to be that extra striker, basically. And yeah, another thing I was going to say is that we have some of them. I think we've top of the championship basically for the number of crosses we've put into the box this season, and I think a large part of that is down to losing O'Hare and Palmer, who can actually influence things in the middle. And we've just seen so much of our play getting funneled out wide. And I think that's a real missing element of this squad right now. Someone who can create through the middle of the pitch. And we've seen quite a lot of our home games, especially recently, is we just get forced out wide all the time. And it's kind of a crapshoot whether we actually create anything with it. And if it hasn't been for our set piece threat, we would be in real trouble because that's really digged us out of games in the past couple of months.
So you are right, but also you could also look at it slightly differently and say that our chance creation is also very, very high. We've had the opportunity to win games and to score more goals, and actually, I guess we have scored goals. It's what's odd about this team, particularly, is that it's so multi-layered dysfunctional that even if you could be like, well, if we had a better number 10, we might create more chances. We do create a lot of chances. We don't finish them. But actually, we score quite a lot of goals, but it doesn't matter because we concede 3 goals every time. It's really hard to pin down where we're going wrong, except to say that it's a little bit of everything. One thing I'd ask you, Dom, as a bit of a tangent to that, is you'd expect that with Lampard coming in, and especially given that he seemed to be insistent on having a say in transfers, you've got to think that maybe 2 first-team players are coming in January, right?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah.
So if you're Lampard, what 2 positions do you prioritise? And Laurie and Lou, get yourself ready for
a horrible thought for Dom. Dom having to be Frank Lampard for even a few minutes.
No. Look, King said that the thing we were missing was a tactician and an elite level coach. Right? Bring Lampard in. Get Dom in number 2. Get Dom operating the laptop for him. I'm telling you, that's the recipe for success. Yeah, go on.
I'm sure, Dom, you've been scouring Chelsea's under-21s for the last week or so, haven't you, to absolutely prime this list?
Yeah, so I think one we'll definitely see is just whoever is the top Chelsea available loan player, just some kid who's 17, never played football in his life and expects to come to Coventry and be the number 10 star player. I think it would be good to see kind of that profile of sort of exciting, confident, attacking player, whether that's wide striker or a number 10, which I think is probably the biggest need. I would really like to see someone at the back somewhere. I said this in the summer as well. Just someone with a bit more experience who can take charge of affairs, whether that's a centre back, whether that's a defensive midfielder, whether that's somehow we end up with our fourth goalkeeper of the season. I think, which
By the way,
don't think is beyond the realms of possibility.
If the question is, what are your two priority positions after we've had a 5 week
Yeah, cover the whole pitch.
Goalkeepers, you'd be like, I actually don't think we've got enough keepers.
Yeah.
So you go for, you're rather than positions, you're going for kind of sort of types there. You're going for a grizzly
Thought leaders.
guy and like a
Yeah.
young Chelsea loanee, yeah?
Yeah, basically.
Laurie, what are you pulling him?
I mean, I don't know, but like I know that I don't trust Frank Lampard to do this. Like Doug King basically took charge of a ship that was sailing like excellently, and the first like massive decision he's had to make has been, I would call, like calamitous. There are so many other like interesting like things we could have done in the managerial position, and to have Frank Lampard like, and Joey, you actually failed to ask me what my moment of the week was, but my moment of the week was when there was a Frank Lampard chant on about like 5 or 10 minutes during the Millwall game, which like basically got smothered by the majority of fans, and it started and then went nowhere and died a death. And then lo and behold, all it takes is a really ugly 1-0 win. And my second moment of the week was Lampard somehow cocking up the easiest thing in the world, which is just doing a fist bump at the right time with all the fans like cheering your name. And I loved it that he managed to fuck that up, because it just made him look like such a like clean shirt, like supply teacher trying to get the kids on side. It was like, all right, mate, like just have some dignity. Like we've sat through with pleasure a half a decade of Mark Robbins. Imagine Mark Robbins coming up to the away end and doing all the like no, you leave that to the players, mate. Like you, the grown-ups stay at the back and they clap quietly. But Frank Lampard is just a little baby, and so obviously he straight away got involved in the fist pumps. He's an absolute melt, and I was stuck in the conundrum of both wanting us to win and wanting him to fail. And I was like, how do I have this like cognitive dissonance where it's like both things can't happen, and I'd obviously prefer us to win, but I hate him so much that I don't know how to feel. He's such a nothing. He's such a meh. At least get someone like Steve Evans in who I can really hate because he's like poisonous. But Frank Lampard, he's just like a fart in the wind. And in 5 years, we'll be talking about, oh my God, do you remember when we had Frank Lampard? How did we let that happen?
But look, what if he's not?
What if he's not? I mean, that would be even worse. I don't want him to be.
If he's
like
standing trial, I don't think that defence gets him off instantly. I think I've probably got to do some more work, right? But I don't think it should just be assumed that he will be. And actually, like, there's a bit of an extension of this thing of like what has been nauseating is all the star fucking on social media of kind of like this is a real statement of intent, and it's Frank Lampard. This is like a guy with Champions League like experience. Like your dad giving you a Porsche, you could be like, this guy's bought a Porsche. Like, no, you got a Porsche. You fucking, there's a big fucking difference, right? The jobs that he's done, I thought he had done way worse at than he had done when you go back and look at them a bit more critically.
I agree.
Like that Derby job, I was convinced they should have won the league, and then you look and you realise that Martin Waghorn is their first choice striker all season. You're like, all right, it's not as cut and dried as it being that, right? And that equally, if the one thing that can definitely be true is that if the answer is removing Mark Robins, you don't want to replace him with someone who's exactly the same, right? You want someone to come in and like, he's a bit of a dweeb, but I don't think he's fucking up the punches or what. Like, you want him to just be his own bloke, don't you? Really?
But what I want, Joey, what I want is someone who isn't, and maybe this is a bit much to ask, but there are a lot of managers we could pick where we wouldn't be such a clear lily pad for something better. That we mean absolutely nothing to Frank Lampard. Like, he doesn't.
Get this. What,
yeah,
this is
no. I want someone to like
fucking I'll tell you what will happen. He'll get us promoted, right, and then he'll get a better job. He'll be like, that's what happens in. I think that sounds like an all right fucking thing to me.
No, but I when you've like been in a state where you feel like you're building something, to go to a position where Frank Lampard essentially wants to get his career back to zero. He's in negative at the moment. He wants to get back up to the surface and be able to breathe oxygen again. And we are his route to like get some oxygen, because at the moment, if he fucks this job, he's in the Gary Neville bin for most people's reasoning. I wanted someone who was like, I don't know, a bit more exciting, who had a little bit more like ingenuity on their CV rather than just a Nepo baby, which is essentially what he is.
I thought I was going to be the biggest Lampard bigot on this podcast, but I'm glad that there's someone more mental than me. Luke, let's hear about you. What is a general feeling about Lampard, kind of either as a manager or as the choice that we've made? Where do you stand on this?
It's really hard to tell in terms of whether this is going to be a success or not, based on his career history. He did decent with Derby and was ultimately undone by a better Villa in the playoffs. And then actually did very well at Chelsea. I'm pretty sure he was working under a transfer embargo and used youth players, and he did very well there, and all credit to him.
Yeah, but it's also worth remembering that before they entered that transfer embargo, they basically did a supermarket sweep trolley dash of every player they could sign immediately.
Yeah, but
you're right. You are right, though, is that wasn't an easy job, and that he blooded the players like Mountain, whatever.
Exactly. He did give the youth players a chance, which very much goes against Chelsea's philosophy. And yeah, I'd say that he did well there, but then I don't know what went wrong for him at Everton, but you could say Everton's a pretty rotten club, and maybe that was some of it.
I think we might have said this on here, but maybe not, because it's been so long we've recorded. I would suggest if Carlo Ancelotti and James Rodriguez couldn't revive Everton, then Frank Lampard with no money might be right to nothing. Yeah. I also don't think that Sean Dyche is a bad manager and is going to get the sack in before Christmas, you'd expect. But if you look through the list of managers that have managed Everton recently and gone on to be very good managers immediately afterwards, Marco Silva hasn't done too badly. They sacked Sam Allardyce for getting Everton to 8th because it wasn't good enough. I think the problem there might be Everton, which is, again, in terms of a critical appraisal of Lampard, that second season was not going well at all when he got sacked. But it's possible, and this is the problem with it. The thing is, really, when Robins went, and I said it right at the very top, it was never going to be Corberan. But as an example, if he'd have gone, Robins has been sacked, you've gone, oh, that's awful. But he goes, but I've got Carlos Corberan. You'd be like, we've got a plan then. It's the fact that he's gone, oh, I've sacked Robins. He'd be like, okay. And he's like, brought Frank Lampard in there. You're like, I don't think that's not necessarily the cast iron caliber of person that we want. But it's not to say that he won't be. It's not like I'm quite glad to listen to you, Laurie, and hear your kind of insane tinfoil hat level of vitriol about it, because it has sort of re-pushed me towards the centre a little bit.
Is there not part of you that really, even just the details, like to think we're paying him more than we're paying Mark Robins, just like Robins was, he sat there on his sofa just being like, watching this, being like, eating his popcorn, like, let's fucking see how this goes, you absolute lunatics.
The detail that bothers me is the fact that in the fans forum, the thing is that weirdly what he was talking about was replacing AD more than it was of replacing Robins, which I think that, I know I've been brainwashed by Paul to some extent, but that I do think that that seemed like on paper I think you can keep Robbins, but that in terms of that as a strategy was one that did make sense. And weirdly, the appointment of the manager was only as important as who that person was bringing in as like a team or a second person or whatever. And there was a very exciting period where there was a thought experiment of what if Lampard brings in Vivash, which at that point you go, now we're talking. That's the management team that I've dreamed of. Because I think that with Lampard, if you're genuinely going to put this structure together, which is what he talked about in the fans forum, is the manager is almost like the president or the prime minister, where they've got about as much actual power as a milk monitor. What they have to do is they have to be the face of the operations, and they have to kind of make sure that everything ticks along while actual people do the work in the background. And you get the impression that Lampard would probably be very good at that job. He seems very amenable. He seems very communicative and empathetic and all those nice things that you'd want a leader to be. The problem is that he doesn't have any demonstrable skill in tactics or coaching or anything. As far as I've got two very good friends that are Chelsea and Everton fans, 3 actually, and all of them are like, he seems like a good guy, but we're not aware of him actually doing a lot of the work. Go on, Laurie, Karen.
And this is my issue because, like you say, all these people being like, oh, it's so good. He's won Champions Leagues. He's played for England. All of those things feed into a kind of level of footballing intelligence and skill. And if that isn't feeding through into being a manager, what is the fucking point of him?
Look, because all you do is fucking work in coffee shops and ride fold-up bikes around whatever fucking area of London it is that you live in, like some sort of hipster dream, right? You don't understand how the real world works, okay? And actually, at his level, if King is on about implementing a structure of the type that he was talking about in the fans forum, is actually Lampard can get away with, not even get away, that job is to be a facilitator, figurehead, leader while people do your job for you. And you go, right, well, actually, you can bring in Lampard. And again, in that thought experiment, you bring in Vivash with him. Thought experiment because it's never going to happen because of all the legal wranglings and the fact that he got sacked and blah, 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 right? But that Lampard is the guy that talks to the press. He gives your club a big profile as the owner of the club. This is the sort of guy that you want as front and centre. Big fucking headline, famous, whatever, all that stuff that we wouldn't want. If it's your money, makes sense, yeah? Then you give him fucking Peter Taylor next to him, who's like in an ideal world version of it. They're on the training ground every day. And my problem is that what I wonder whether, and this is only a wonder, I've got absolutely fucking no knowledge as usual. I wonder whether part of the length of the delay is that Lampard is ringing his contacts book and going, "Do you fancy coming and being my number 2?" And it's a big long list of people that have been like, "No, Clement." The people that you'd have got.
They'll have to work so hard.
But and in the end, what we've got is, and I don't again like we've got to give out all of these people time. But my understanding is that Chris Jones, is he called Chris Jones? Chris Jones is a very, very competent coach, But I don't think I'm not sure he's the kind of the number two that Doug was talking about. I think we're talking about a very, very qualified coach. I don't think we're talking about the master tactician that we were talking about. And who else did he bring in?
So I think Chris Jones has done a lot of like work as like a fitness coach before, and then I think his role here is like not necessarily focused on fitness because we've got a performance director taking care of that. But then we've got Joe Edwards as the assistant, who was the Millwall manager before Neil Harris was, who he's worked with like England's youth teams, and he's got a pretty good reputation. So I think that's kind of a tick in Lampard's column, because I think otherwise you'd be wondering like who's like where the actual like as people were saying, like the coaching tactical skill is. Like Joe Edwards is like someone with like really good coaching reputation, someone who got into a head coach role in the Championship based on his reputation as a coach. So that's a real big positive, I think. And yeah, I think the thing with this Lampard appointment is he is only going to be as good as the coaching staff that he has, because that was the case during his time at Derby, Chelsea, and Everton, where Jody Morris, and I think Anthony Barry, who is currently the England assistant manager with Thomas Tuchel, we're doing a lot of the work, and he's the figurehead at the top of it. So,
Sorry, is Jody Morris in a job somewhere else at the minute, or what was the stumbling block there?
Yeah, I think so. We'd have to double check this now. I think
I think
I looked at it
was
before.
some kind of falling out between Lampard and Morris at Chelsea or Everton, and they stopped working together.
It doesn't appear to be in a job at the moment.
Yeah, because I think Jody Morris, like the week before Lampard was appointed, posted a picture on Twitter of him like playing like 11-a-side football with Lampard.
Wait, before he's appointed for Coventry?
Yeah, so perhaps the split has been mended, but they didn't want to work with each other again.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But going back to what we were saying there, so that potentially, when you've gone through there, is like maybe what Lampard is very good at is understanding who is good to get the job done. What you've listed there is a bunch of people who have been very, very able deputies to him, depending on the value with which you compute that they've added. But the way that they've all gone on to bigger and better things, you'd have to think, well, these guys are clearly like maybe part of what Lampard is very good at is recognizing who he needs and who he wants, and that's what you've got to trust in. The other thing is that, like, how many you got to be careful about being too clever about these sorts of things before you let them happen, because Mark Robins hadn't got a glittering career before us either time he came to us. It's not sometimes you need a mixture of experience and life and whatever else. You don't know whether you're right, Laurie, is that there's a level to which you could look at Lampard and say,
I am, yeah.
This is a job for him that is only a stopgap before something else. Or if you're him, you look at the way that you were dispensed with by Everton and Chelsea and whatever, and think, do you know what? Actually, when I was happy was when I was at Derby, and I wonder whether there's something to be said for trying to put roots down. You don't know. You've got no idea until it happens, until you have a look. And I'm inherently kind of cautious about it. Cautious is probably a bit. I described him as one of the bottom three choices I would have as a manager to somebody else recently. But that let's be kind and say, give him a chance, be cautious or whatever. But it could go anyway, couldn't it? It really could go.
But the problem we have with
actually, if King is if King is as kind of autocratic as it would increasingly look like it is, actually, it might not be Lampard again. It might be Lampard might have come with the proviso of I need to have a hand in transfers. And King said yes to him, and once he's through the door, he gets to January and just says no. Dean Austin does all that. You don't know, do you? Anyway, go on.
I think one of the problems we have with Lampard, where we're a bit damned if we do, damned if we don't, that we didn't have with Robins, is Robins is about as sexy as Steve Evans, give or take. So no one, no matter how well Robins did, no one was ever going to give him a job, apparently, or either he was turning them down or he wasn't getting offered them. As soon as Lampard does something good for us, he's so like Lampard. Yeah,
Win-win.
he's going to be gone. That's
great.
I don't really see that as win-win.
He's in position and that he can go somewhere else and we can get Carlos Corberán when West Brom are out of money.
Why are you obsessed with Carlos Corberán?
Do you know why I'm
I want
obsessed with
Liam
Carlos Corberán?
Rosenior. Get him in.
And I'm conscious of time. So, well, yeah, actually, Rosenior is a very good point. But the reason it's Corberán for me is because I actually don't know. So Celis, maybe. Eustace, maybe. Like normally, you would imagine that you'd have your eye set on someone that you'd go, oh, it might be a little bit out of our league, but I'd really like them or whatever. I don't think there is and again, part of this is my fucking football ignorance. I don't think there is someone currently that you'd look at and go, they would fucking really they would possibly come and they would definitely do a good job. Like if Farker was out of work for it. I know it's a stupid example, but there's like someone that you go, look, this is a guy that would fucking take us further on. I'm not really sure they're there, which is why it's so maddening that Robins was released when he was.
Because it's only a matter of time. People get fired.
why not wait for someone? Why not just fucking stick it out and just think, because how much, anyway, but look again, let's wait and see. Okay. Any more? Any thoughts? We haven't talked about Cardiff. I mean, is there any point talking about Cardiff? Is there anything to talk about? Why did Torp take the penalty?
Got the best technique.
Do you think he is, all things considered, he's like, if, anybody could, who is our first choice penalty taker at the moment?
I suppose, because he would usually have been Haji Wright, but he's injured at the moment. So, I mean, like, who else would you turn to? I remember Eccles taking good penalties, but he was off the pitch too, so maybe Sims, just because he's a striker and you want him to get goals.
Yeah, and you do think it's a shame that he didn't kind of like insist on taking that. Although saying that, if he misses it, and then we should just be happy that we scored it, I suppose. He's a conundrum that we don't need to go into, because I'm desperate to be his therapist, aren't I? And I don't actually think that might be the thing that will help anyone. Okay. Right, one final thing that I wanted to talk about very quickly before we go, assuming that there isn't anything sort of urgently pressing, is, Luke, you mentioned before, you touched on your attendance at the fans forum as part of your representation of a supporters group. I'm saying that like I don't know what it is, but actually what I'm saying is, would you care to elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Yeah, so I run the Proud Sky Blues, and we are the official LGBTQ plus supporters group of Coventry City Football Club, and we started up in August 2023. And to be honest, it had been something that I'd kind of and ahed about doing for a while. I'll be honest, being in kind of a quote unquote leadership role isn't my natural environment. I kind of see myself as an introvert. So starting a supporters group just didn't seem like something I really wanted to do on the surface. But I was as someone who does identify as LGBTQ plus, I do have a unique perspective on what it's like to be to be that and a football fan, because the environment historically hasn't been great for people like us or anyone that feels a little bit othered by society. And football, as we know, does kind of hold a mirror up to society in that way. And I was very aware that the majority of clubs in the Premier League have these supporters groups. Most Championship clubs do, League One, League Two. There's even non-league LGBTQ plus supporters groups going now. And I just thought, this isn't going to happen on its own. And if it's not going to be me, who? And if not now, when? So here we are a year later, and we have over 100 members, many of whom are season ticket holders. We've got followers from people that live in the US, New Zealand. It's been quite a big reach. And I suppose the primary reason for wanting to do this is I think there is an opportunity to change football for the better without, football isn't any better because there's discrimination involved. It's kind of a sour note when that kind of happens within football, whether it's race, sexuality, gender, whatever it may be. I think there's just an opportunity here to do something good, and I do believe we are doing that. So we've got over 100 members now. There's people that often would go to the football games completely on their own and would feel isolated while surrounded by 20,000 other people all wearing the same shirt, but they kind of feel as I say, isolated. But coming into this group, there's like a community, there's a family, and people have overcome things like crippling social anxiety, depression, just from feeling closer to the club than they ever have been because of this group that we've created.
Can I ask you a question about something you said at the start there? Is you said the experience for people in the LGBTQ plus community of being at games has not always been the most hospitable, to sort of paraphrase what you said. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think if I go back to when...
I'm not, by the way, I'm not like, I don't believe you. But
I know.
The reason I'm asking specifically, right, is so there's been a lot of this last couple of weeks has had the Sam Morsey thing and the Mark Gay thing. I know that me and you talked about it. Yeah, me and you talked about it a little bit on Twitter while we were, and there was something that I read that I thought was really interesting, where somebody had said some of this is about, like, it's galling that we're as far down in sort of the year that we're in, and that this is the case, but that it's about education, and that what you see on social media is a lot of people who I don't think are necessarily really terrible, bigoted people. But they're making comments around kind of like, I don't see why this needs to be in football, or like, I don't keep politics out. And you kind of think I think it's really important for people to get, I just don't think they understand what people experience, which is why I'm asking you to elaborate on it, if anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think unfortunately a lot of the campaigns just kind of focus on sticking some rainbow corner flags up, and kind of that's kind of it. So people aren't really kind of understanding what the point behind it is. Whereas this is a basic human rights thing. You know, everyone should be able to go to the football without fear of feeling discriminated, othered, isolated, or intimidated just by being who they are whilst watching the football. And the examples I kind of have of, like, when I was growing up, you know, using certain words like they were just shouted at, like the referee, players, and being in that space, you just kind of feel like, oh God, I don't feel like I belong here in a way. And it's just that basic point of, you know, the discrimination is not okay, and it has to stop. Thankfully, it is better now than it was when I was going through, but it does still rear its ugly head every now and then. There are still reports that go in at COV games, home and away, and incidents are kind of dealt with, albeit somewhat under the radar. But it is still happening there, and particularly in the online space now. You know, on certain channels, it's very difficult to have a reasoned discussion about this. But I think, you know, we just have to get to a point where we can all agree that, you know, homophobia is wrong, and that's it, and be able to call it that, and have, you know, we should all be able to agree that an anti-homophobia campaign is a good thing. And that, but surprisingly,
Laurie, can I bring you in on this? Because you've historically said that it's not. That's
yeah, I mean, I'm
I
glad
don't mean to make light of it, but I mean, it's fucking mental that you'd have to say that out loud, isn't it? Like, we can all agree on this, right? Yeah, you'd think that it should be a very simple thing to agree with, but it's not, is it? It's clearly not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it, because I didn't realise that Lou represented that group. And the Man United stuff recently, I just found utterly baffling, where I was like, footballers operate in a very weird space where, I mean, you guys probably come across it, where everyone, like, what did they stand with their teammate because he decided not to kind of wear the kind of rainbow laces or whatever. It's like, of all the people that need support, I don't think 150 grand a week footballers need support for, like, refusing to participate in something. Like, yeah, these things are just gestures, but I don't think it should be, like, skimmed over that an entire football team of the stature of Man United, maybe the biggest club on the planet, are just all like, nah, fuck that. We're standing with our mate here. There's definitely gay players in that team. That, like, statistically, there probably are. And they're not standing with them probably because that player is living their, like, secret life in the team. So I think more than ever, even though, as you said, Lou, when I started watching football, maybe when I was like 9 or 10, like, it was so prevalent, like, kind of homophobic abuse. I just thought that was part of football. I was like, that just comes with the territory. And there has been a lot of progress. Like, I'm sure you're much more alert to it than I am, but there has been progress. And so now, if you heard something like that, you would be shocked, and you would look, and you would definitely say something, which is definitely progress. But it's great that you've made a club for Coventry, because I think, yeah, now more than ever we need it, because, like you say, a lot of those kind of comments have just moved online. They haven't disappeared, so to say.
Look, I think it's got better. Sorry, I think it's got better, but I don't think many people would be brave enough to use the N word in a stadium, even kind of at reasonably quiet volumes. But I think you could use the F word in the stadium, and largely people would just tolerate that. And I'm not on about our fucking, liberal metropolitan elite fucking groups, right? I'm on about like fucking on the concourse getting a pot. I don't think that would raise hackles in the same way as it would do with it still seems like I'm not advocating it. It still feels like that is a more acceptable form of it. I just don't think, and again, I've not had to experience it.
That's where it is down the line, like what you mentioned, where it's like why people who say why bring politics into football, what they're saying is people don't say that about racism so much because racism is further along the path of like people being like, that is absolutely not okay, whereas like homophobia is lagging a little bit behind, I imagine. So therefore people call it politics rather than just like common decency.
And Laurie will be sharing his prejudice league of who's got I think everything might have a bit of a distance to travel yet before we're at a level of acceptability. What I was going to say was, look, I ain't had to deal with it. I just can't imagine how fucking in the spirit of people being like, I don't see why this is a thing. I just can't imagine just living your life and being you and go into a game and then going to get a pint at halftime or go for a fag at halftime or whatever it is that you're going to do at halftime or whatever it is. And then like hearing those words and it just being like, and just people just being like, yep, that's just something that people say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it must affect young players as well, because all I could kind of think about with the whole Sam Morsey thing is, say you're a player coming through Ipswich's academy and you might be gay, and the first team are your heroes, and then if your captain doesn't wear an armband that has a simple message of you are welcome here, like this isn't about promoting homosexuality in any way. This is just about saying you're welcome here. Like, I'm not going to discriminate you. You're much as valid part of this club as anyone else. And to have your captain not wear that armband, I can't imagine how you might feel as like a 16, 17-year-old kid going through a pretty big thing and trying to work out your place in the world, and then having like your hero, your leader, just kind of not back you. And that's where I kind of came down to it.
There's also a really weird sort of basic, and I know that I love to take us off into kind of more existential sort of conversations here, so feel free to fucking like close this down whenever people feel like I've talked too much. There's also this bizarre thing going on of there's a defense of Sam Morsey, which is but they're his religious beliefs, right? But the problem is that his religious beliefs are denying the right of a person to be themselves. And it's so fundamentally not, to my knowledge, there is nothing explicit. It's one, it suggests that religion only exists in one very black and white context. That like there is only one, whatever the religion is, like doctrine, which just isn't the case at all. You have to put your own personal interpretation into a religion. Even if you remove that from it, a religion shouldn't be allowed to refuse a person for being who they are. It comes back to this thing that sexuality is something of a choice, which is just fucking crazy that there's still people that think that that's where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, ultimately for me, this is a human rights issue more than anything else, and that should be the message. Really, it should be. We should, as I said before, we should just be able to agree that homophobia is bad, and therefore it's okay to put a message out to say everyone is welcome in this stadium. Everyone's support of football is welcome, and that's I don't see how the issue gets so complicated, and it's really not that nuanced.
Taking it back to the positives that you talked about before is the video that you put out. Was it the start of this season?
Yes, it was our promo video. I think we recorded that towards the end of last season against Leeds, which was we picked a good day to do the filming inside the cinema because obviously it was a win. But yeah, so yeah, we put that out just to kind of have some talking points from myself and some of our members about what it really is like to be a part of this group, and how it's helped people. And I think it's a kind of a big example of the work we've done only in 12 months, really. So yeah, we're really proud of that video. We're really glad that it's got the traction that I think it deserves.
The videos are like really amazing. The video, I think, does a really fabulous job of like perfectly encapsulating for anybody that's like, I don't understand why this is a part of football. It's such a beautiful kind of answer to that. So for anybody that hasn't watched it, what's the best way to watch it?
So you can give our website a bit of traction if you feel like it. So you can just go onto proudclublues.co.uk and it's on the homepage there. Or if you just go onto our channels on either Instagram or Twitter, it's pinned at the top, so you shouldn't be able to miss it.
Likewise, for anyone that, it's going to be very unlikely that I think that anybody has come to you through us and hasn't heard of you before, but on the off chance, where do you meet before games?
Yeah, so we have a reserve table thanks to the anecdote. So yeah, we meet on there usually before every home game, usually a couple of hours before kickoff. We'll post all the details on our social media channels about those meetups. I think on Saturday we are going to have to try Dylan's because the anecdote's, funny enough, going to be closed to general admission. Just some hospitality stuff going on there, but yeah,
for that one. But as I say, we'll post on social media about that. And we hope to welcome some new members.
Yeah, and those meetups are free for everybody as well, aren't they? Again,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You don't have to identify as LGBTQ to be a member. We welcome allies. So long as you're just understanding that this is an inclusive environment for everyone, and you just want to have a chat with us about anything really, about football, about Frank Lampard, literally anything, you can just you can come and have a drink
Frank
with us.
Lampard, welcome. I hope he's not.
He is, yeah. Everyone's welcome.
But this is the mad thing about it, is that above all else, is that forget the letters or anything else, it's just COF fans.
Yeah, when all is said and done, yeah, we are all Sky Blues, and we're just here to kind of represent that kind of sub demographic that does exist within the fandom, and hopefully give those people a voice and a sense of belonging.
Beautiful. Right, well, fantastic. Lou, thank you so much for going through that with us.
No, thank you.
Laurie, Dom, anything else extra from you?
No, you've just got a massive echo on you all of a sudden. I don't know what happened.
I think, if I had to guess, I think Lou's changed his headphone situation.
Because Lou went HD for a second, which was exciting.
Correct, yeah. My AirPods died.
AirPods died, and he's now in the hospital, would be my guess, because that sounds very... the aircraft...
The echo chamber.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, Dom, we talked before about your Bassette 10-game review and all of your wonderful blogness. Again, come on.
Yeah, it's
can't be anyone that hasn't got it at this point, unless it's for the few at the back.
Yeah, sidewayssammy.com, and yeah, if you want to avoid the inevitable collapse of all known social media, you can subscribe to it at sidewayssammy.com/subscribe, and then you get it into your emails, and you don't have to worry about finding things on socials. So there.
Beautiful. Laurie, will you be furnishing with some writing at some point? You've got a baby now, haven't you? So all that kind of that enjoyable stuff in life is all dead.
Well, Imogen suggested it on Saturday, and I was like, Imogen, I genuinely think you'd be the only person that cared. So I still no, unfortunately, yeah. But thanks for having me on.
Lou, any final things you want to plug?
I'll give Sideways Sammy's another plug. I'm just letting you know, Dar just signed up. I've just subscribed to you. So
Terrific. Right.
But yeah.
Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening, guys. We'll be back next week. Bye.